Today, I'm chatting with Erica Koo, also known as Stretch, and my plan is that throughout this episode, that's what I'm gonna refer to you as Stretch. So welcome to the podcast. It's really great to have you here. We just had a tiny chat before we hit record, and Stretch doesn't really know what she's in for because basically I someone who I train, one of my personal training clients, recommended you as a guest because her partners worked with you. And so I just basically emailed you and said, "Do you want to be a guest?" And you said yes. So here we are. But you don't know anything about me. And I only know a little bit about you. So we're going to get to know each other. But obviously, you came with a recommendation. So you're doing some really interesting work based in Sydney. And you are essentially a personal trainer and a fascia stretch therapist, hence
Yes.
the name. No,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
that's it.
and you're also an athlete. So you work in the air as with some aerial hoop,
Yeah.
which is also known as Lyra, and you're also a power lifter. And do you still hold the record?
I'm not quite sure. So those two are sports I used to do, like I was quite passionate about a couple of years ago. And then when COVID hit and the lockdowns hit, it made it very difficult to practice Lyra.
Mm.
So that became phased out, I think. I did do it for about, I think, close to 4 years, and I did maybe three performances in that time. So I was pretty big into that and I really, really enjoyed it. The powerlifting record, I'm not sure. I think I held it for maybe 2 years, and then now they've changed federations. So I'm
Okay.
pretty sure there's new records being set all the time. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to declare your amazing record anyway because you weighed in when you were doing when you were competing in, was it 2019?
Yeah.
Weighing in at 57 kilo body weight,
Yeah.
bench pressed 82 and a half kilos. That
Yeah.
is solid. That's amazing. Like, kudos.
Thank you.
I'm gonna like so my background is as a personal trainer, which you've probably gathered because of who
Yeah.
referred us.
Yeah.
And I have a background in competitive CrossFit.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
great.
So a
Yeah.
few years ago now, I'm retired,
Yeah.
and I just kind of dabble with a little bit of CrossFit for my health and well-being and to challenge my body. But
Yeah.
yeah, so like obviously there's a connection there with that in that competitive space, which I would be really keen to talk to you about.
Yeah,
I feel
amazing.
like I've done a whole bunch of talking so far. So can you kind of give us a bit of you know, an intro of yourself, what you're doing right now,
Yeah.
and your work and that sort of thing?
Yeah. This
No
is
pressure.
I always find it very difficult
Yes.
to talk about myself, actually. That's a bit of
Okay.
a hard one. However, I will try my best. So I used to be a competitive powerlifter, I used to do a lot of Lyra. Most recently, I've been actually training in weightlifting. So because of your CrossFit,
Oh,
you'd probably
yeah.
understand it's like the snatch and clean and jerk. So that's kind of been my new love. I've also been learning how to sprint. So I've been doing a lot of sprinting in the past since maybe January. So I've been working with a coach to see how far I can push myself. Um, in terms of my work, I've been like a strength coach for probably like reaching 8 or 9 years now. I've been now running my own business in fascia stretch therapy and personal training for probably about 4 years. So the fascia stretch therapy is now probably what is primarily most of my work. And it's this amazing form of like athletic manual bodywork therapy that works very holistically, looks at the body in a very integrative manner. And unlike, massage, which is more about isolated muscles. So if someone comes in and says, my shoulder's really painful, the therapist might look at, let's say, their shoulder joint itself, biceps, triceps, neck, anything else that's related to it. But I look at more what other areas is that joint connected to? And that can go as deep as things like the lower back and the hip on the opposite side of the body. And then, working from there to see whereabouts the body needs the most work, and then creating balance across the body from that. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. It sounds like really great work. And obviously, you're working with a whole bunch of different people. And I
Yeah.
definitely want to delve into that because that's, yeah, we want to like let people know about that.
Mm.
But what I'm really keen to start with, because I feel like, look, it sounds like you're doing a whole bunch of really
Yeah.
cool things in terms of, challenging your own athletic potential. And I want to chat with you a little bit about that
Yeah.
because you didn't have a background in that kind of stuff when you were a kid, right? You weren't a competitive
No.
athlete, you weren't into sports or anything like that.
No,
Or
quite
were
the
you?
opposite.
Yeah,
No, no,
me
quite the
too.
opposite. Yeah, yeah.
Me too. And what
Yeah.
I guess it's really easy for someone who isn't maybe isn't even exercising yet.
Mm.
It's really easy to put someone like you or me on a pedestal and think that we're
Yeah.
special
Yeah.
or that, that we're the lucky ones, or I don't know.
Mm.
Um, but actually, no, I
Mm.
really think it's important for people to know that the human potential
Yeah.
is for anyone.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
So what was your kind of childhood like? Oh, look, I don't want to go
Yeah,
into
yeah.
it.
No,
Into
no, no,
like we
it's
don't
okay.
have to go
Yeah.
into any like deep stuff, but like in terms of your when you said quite the opposite
Yeah.
to being a
So
sports
when I
kid.
was a child, I was not very athletic. So aside from, things like climbing trees and, playing on the playground, things like that, I was very much into art. Like my parents used to say, I learned how to draw before I learned how to walk. So that was really my thing. So creating things, reading, that's how I grew up. And then when I got into school, kids kind of get grouped into things that they're good at. So if someone's naturally athletic, or if someone's naturally artistic, or great at things like public speaking, that's how they get categorized and grouped in. And I went through a public school system. So I think, I'm not sure about private school systems, but I know in public school systems, basically, you get put into PE classes, art classes, and if you're good at it, awesome. But there's not much room for nurturing the students who they either might not be interested, and or they might have potential, but they haven't quite had the opportunity for that to show through yet. So you're kind of thrown in, and it's like, these people are really bad, so we're not going to pick them as part of the team. School carnival, cool. You don't know how to swim, awesome. Well, you can just wade in the kids' pool over there. So there was a lot about it where I identified with, I am not a very active person. I'm not an athletic person. This will not be for me. So as a result of it, I never tried, because, you try a couple of times and then you get told that you're not good at it, or you realize that you're not good at it, and you can't compete against all these other children who either are naturally gifted and or they do all these extracurricular activities outside that's helped them nurture this skill. um, so I stopped, enjoying PE, did what I could to get out of it, and tried to nurture the things that I thought I was good at, which was the creative arts and the like the linguistics, so things like reading and learning different languages and things like that. And then there was a point in my, I would say maybe university studies, where I started really getting into weight training and sort of like weightlifting and becoming a little bit fitter. It didn't start off with the best intentions, because I actually initially started off with the intent to lose weight. And I identified that as now having been problematic, because I was never fat or chubby. It was the sort of messaging I received socially and culturally, which led me to be like, oh, well, wait, maybe if I do a lot of cardio and eat less, I'll lose weight.
Mm,
So I hit a point where I was about 50 kilos and jumping on the scale and wondering, how do I get down to even lower?
wow.
Yeah. And this was also back when social media was starting to come up. So things like Instagram and Facebook, and there were more women who were starting to get into strength training and promote it as a thing that can be done by, all genders, all types of people. So I started following these women who were incredibly strong, had these really, I wouldn't say muscular, but just fit physiques. And I thought, oh, And they also had this messaging that was like, you can't, it's not healthy to starve yourself to get down to a weight that you're then continuing to do that for. And something about that really resonated with me. So I started lifting weights, and then ever since then, I think I've sort of made my way into lots of different strength training programs and really started enjoying the fact that, oh, this is something I could be good at. I don't need to be perfect at it, but it's good for me. I enjoy it. I can see a progression. And I also really felt very empowered in my body for the first time. So instead of trying to criticize it and feeling, small and wanting to get smaller in, I would argue, ways that were not very good for me, I started feeling more empowered to be the way I was. And if this is the way my body looks because I'm performing and because I'm fueling, then this is good. So I think from then on, I went on to work through like an eating disorder and work through quite a few things to come to here now, where a lot of it's very performance based. Like I love being able to challenge my body, but also my mind. I think you would understand from CrossFit, weightlifting and training is very much about the mind than it is just about the physical body. So that is now, I think, one of the reasons why I continue to train. It's the being able to observe what sort of thoughts and feelings come to mind when I am challenged and when there is a bit of self-doubt, and then being able to train that as well as, trying to get stronger physically.
Wow, that's so cool. What a journey.
Yeah.
A couple of things came up then, and oh gosh. Yeah, it was really funny. It really resonated for me because when I
Yeah.
went to school, I was also creative, but I was into drama, and I
Yeah.
and,
Lovely.
and I never got put on the team, right? So I would try and never got nurtured in sport. Loved it,
Yeah.
but I think it's such a fine line, isn't it? Like if you're not
Yeah.
encouraged to do it, you just think you're not good enough,
Yeah.
and I guess the teachers are not. They don't have the capacity to nurture.
Mm.
And let's face it, teachers have favorites too.
Yeah.
I think that was my experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I didn't get into it until I was in my late 20s. And I think I actually did it for the same reason. I came to Australia and I
Mm.
dabbled here and there with a bit of aerobics and a little bit of strength training. And I came to Australia for a year, and I went back to the UK, and I'd put on some weight.
Yeah.
And so I joined the gym to lose weight. Same thing.
Mm.
But yeah, and so it's kind of, I fluctuated. I don't know. Oh, and then it wasn't until I was actually, so I kind of went, in and out of doing exercise. And it wasn't until I was 30 and I was working in a cafe and it was next door to a gym.
Yeah.
And I was always kind of like, what can I do? Like, what can I do? Because working in
Mm.
the arts, you don't get much work. You work in cafes.
Mm.
And I was like, I could be a personal trainer.
Mm.
And that's really when it started. And then once I'd
Yeah.
qualified as a personal trainer, I found CrossFit.
Mm.
Um,
Amazing.
but yeah, so it's really interesting what you said about the body image stuff, because obviously that was how I got into it when I was trying to lose weight, and it
Yeah.
worked. And I didn't, I mean, yeah, that social media wasn't around, so it wasn't such a thing. I've actually found that more
Mm.
challenging in the last 10 years
Yeah.
than
Yeah.
previously. And even at the beginning of CrossFit, there wasn't really that much
Mm.
social media.
Yeah.
But it's interesting, once you get more focused on performance and what your body is capable of in the gym, and the numbers in terms of your strength and like what you're going to do when you're in the gym, your body, you're not focused on what your body looks like, but your
Mm.
body actually adapts and looks
Yeah.
pretty good anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. I think
Like
you
you
really
look
start to.
athletic, you look strong, you look
Mm.
healthy, all of those
Yeah.
things that you're probably aspiring to,
Mm.
you know, but it doesn't really, like I never go into, well, I never go into the gym thinking I'm doing it because I want to look good
Mm.
necessarily.
Mm.
Mind and body. So I thought that was really interesting as well when you were talking about like challenging your body, but also what's going on in your mind when you're training and how you overcome those things. And I think that that was probably the biggest thing for me when I was doing CrossFit as it got more and more competitive, because we were kind
Mm-hmm.
of early adopters. So I went to the CrossFit Games in 2009. So it was
Yeah,
really
wow.
quite small, and it just grew after that, and continues to do so. But it was my mind. It was the mind thing that got me in the
Mm,
end. It was like actually being competitive was quite felt quite lonely,
mm, mm-hmm.
because you're out there to do as best as you can regardless of the other people around you, which didn't really sit with me very well. But also
Mm,
the amount of self-doubt, like as other people start, more and more people start doing it, and
mm-hmm.
you start wondering whether you're actually good enough. And yeah,
Yeah,
that got me in the end, I have to say.
yeah.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that was the stuff that got me.
Mm.
What have been some of your challenges, and how have you overcome them when it's come to that sort of the mental game?
So I think I also forgot to mention this at the beginning. I'm actually training to become a sports psychologist, like a registered sports
Oh, yes,
psychologist.
I
So
saw that on your website. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
I'm in my master's at the moment, and even since starting my studies, it's been a bit of a whirlwind of a journey in terms of what sort of techniques I can use on myself, so that if I'm going to be working with people who are going to go through the same process of having imposter syndrome, you know meeting self-doubt, they could be training for something for years, and then the pressure of competition is what gets them. And I think it's been a really interesting process because I feel as if I've challenged myself mentally in many different ways since starting this, level of study as well. And I still am a very anxious person. But performance anxiety used to be a really big thing for me. When I was competing in powerlifting, competitions really were very challenging. Um, for most of it, I was able to, like, in particular, if you look at the day that I did my bench press record, I managed to overcome it and actually, achieve what I set out to do. One of my mantras was trust my training, because whenever I would train, all these thoughts would come up and I would get very intrusive, negative visualizations of me failing away,
Oh,
because we all understand what that feels like. We understand what it feels like when unrack for a back squat, unrack for a bench press, or, if you're going in for a snatch and you're anticipating the weight of what that's going to feel like in your hand, sometimes that can work against you, because in your mind, you're thinking, what if it feels like the time I failed it? What if it makes me feel like I'm not going to be able to make it? So I do remember the one comp that did break me actually was that was a competition at a state level where I was going to try and break my own bench press record. And at the time, the under 57 category, some of the women who were competing in it, really strong women, but basically people were saying, oh, Erica, you're going to take first place because, like, your opener, which is the first attempt for a squat, is heavier than all the other girls, third attempts. And that somehow placed more pressure on me. I think
yeah.
I let it get to me a little bit. So I walked into that competition having done a lot of mental work. I wrote down all my thoughts, wrote down all the reasons why this competition was going to go well for me, like how I was going to perform. There were a couple of training sessions leading into that competition where I'd failed quite a few of the top set weights, and that impacted my confidence. And, unfortunately, our brains are set up to look for threats. It's a protective mechanisms for ourselves. If you have an anxious brain, unfortunately, your threat center of your brain is even more sensitive to those things. So for me, whenever something like that used to happen, it provided more evidence for me to be like, oh, this shows me that comp is not going to go well. So I remember,
Mm.
despite the fact that I tried to, do quite a lot of mental work around it and look for all these signs and be like, no, look at the number of times you failed a weight, but still managed to do really well. Look at the comps you managed to do really well. But I did go into that competition placing a lot of pressure on myself to perform really, really well. Um, I ended up bombing out and not making any of my squat attempts. So I actually failed all my squats.
Oh, poop.
Yeah. So whatever bench press attempt I made on that day would not count. And I remember coming off that third squat, which I failed at the bottom not able to come up being like, oh, that's it. That's actually it. I have nothing left. But I did go on to still bench press 85, which was an unofficial
Yay!
record. Yeah, which was great. But I did walk away from that comp feeling as if I had failed myself, but also failed my coach, that my mind had failed me, because it was almost as if all the negative visualizations and these intrusive thoughts I had had leading into the competition had somehow come true. And that stayed with me for a long time. And then I think most recently I did a novice weightlifting comp, and it's been maybe like 4 years since that poor competition performance. There was a lot to learn from that. And one of the biggest things that has changed is my understanding of anxiety, my acceptance of it, and through its acceptance, my reframing of what it is. So in the past, if I'd be anxious and nervous and I'd get all these negative visualizations, and people who've been through it know how uncontrollable that is. You can't really tell yourself, no, 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 don't think about that, because then it actually makes it worse.
Yeah.
Um, but anxiety and excitement, that level of arousal, the main difference is the meaning that you attribute to that feeling in your body. So whereas previously it was, I'm nervous, I'm going to fail, this means I'm not going to perform well. Now it's, oh, my body's actually getting me ready to do this really big thing.
Yeah.
That's a heavy weight out there. I need this. So the most recent novice weightlifting comp I did, I actually lent into that a lot more. And I was like, no, this is me getting excited. My body is ready. It's good. I just need to ride this out. I think that's one of the biggest things that has changed, is my relationship with anxiety, and just understanding and not trying to fight it so much, but leaning into it a lot more. And this is one of the things I've been trying to get my clients to do a lot, because even when I do fascia stretch therapy, if I work with like some of the athletes I work with, a lot of it is around they're carrying all their anxiety in their body because they've got a comp next week. And part of it is going, this is your body gearing you up. Might be a little bit early, but it's not a bad thing to have this. It shows that you care. It means your body's starting to produce this energy that you're going to need for the day to do this really big thing that's clearly important to you. You've worked really hard for, and you kind of need this system so that you can perform really well. Otherwise, the heavyweight's probably not going to come up in the same way. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Yeah, it's a great way to shift your perspective. One of the things that is quite challenging about competition, especially when you're doing weightlifting, is you have to you have to anticipate what you want the outcome to be. And I kind of find that if I go into a CrossFit workout, or if I've gone into a CrossFit workout in the past, and someone say how long do you think it's going to take, or how much, I'd always say I don't know. I don't like to anticipate it, because if I judge too much and then I don't make it, then that mental thing, you're like, oh, I'm not keeping up with what I thought I was capable of, and so you get that negative self-talk. Or you might set the bar too low to keep you safe, because that's something you can do. So I used to try and keep it wide open. But when you've done a workout before, when you've done a lift before, and you know what your potential is, and you're trying to push it even higher, it's hard to have that kind of, like, you have to have that goal in mind. But if you hang on to the goal and it fucks with your head, then it can really hold you back. And weightlifting especially, like, you've got to be able to go out there and do something you've never done before.
Yep.
That's part of the psychology of it, right? Is like,
Yep.
yeah, it's not just about your physical body. It's about, like, I've never done this before, and getting over that hurdle. Yeah, it's intense. What are you what is your weightlifting like? Are you competing in weightlifting now?
I would eventually like to do some sanctioned competitions. I've
Yeah.
only ever done 2 novice ones. But yeah, I think once I finish my masters, I would actually like to
Yeah.
compete in some sanctioned ones and see how far I can take it. Yeah, I do love the competing aspect. What you said before really resonated with me about, you saying with weightlifting, you actually have to go out there and do something you've never done before. And I agree with this so much. Because there's always uncertainty with competition. You can train, like, just to use the example of the Olympics, you can train for 4 years for this
Mm,
really big goal and have a very good measure or baseline measure of what you're capable of. But then you show up at a competition and you've got the pressure, you've got the fact that it's a completely different environment, you've got jet lag, you know, there's all sorts of different things that make it different from what your ideal training conditions were. And I think in psychology, they talk a lot about, sports confidence and what they call robust sports confidence. And that's a sense of confidence an athlete can have that is controllable, that will remain stable across different environments. So, if you've got external uncontrollable sources of sports confidence, it could be things like weather, like the platforms, the shape of the bar, like the knurling on the bar, things like that. And if that's your only source, then you're less likely to feel confident even in your own abilities to perform if you're put into an environment when that's all gone.
mm,
So
mm.
we want to be able to build up more things that are, maybe a bit more internal, a bit more controllable, that they can always rely on, and also draw from multiple sources of sports confidence as well. But I also think what's fascinating about weightlifting and what I love about it is you can miss your opener that you could do with your eyes closed and then still come back on your third one and do a PB lift. And I feel like there's so much about weightlifting that is mental. You have to let go of what you just did.
Totally.
Yeah, and then you just have to what matters most is the bar in front of you all the
Yeah.
time. Yeah.
I know. And when weightlifters, they go out, they do their opening lift and they miss it, and then they
Mm.
go up in weight.
They do, yes.
Like,
Yeah.
how is that even a thing? I couldn't do it. My husband has just been doing some competitive weightlifting he just got the masters in his age
Oh,
category.
awesome.
Yeah, he won for Australia. Australasia,
Amazing.
maybe. Yeah,
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 amazing.
yeah. And I watch and I'm like, how do you even? I'd be like
Mm.
going up by 1 kilo,
Mm. I
if
mean, look,
that.
like competing is a skill though. That's what I've realized as
Mm,
well. You could have the perfect training sessions, but if you're not accustomed to the competing environment and if you don't know how you react under pressure in
mm,
competing environments, that will probably break you initially as well.
yeah.
There's an amazing weightlifter, actually. She's a master's level weightlifter who comes in for FST. And I remember going to one of her comps and leading into it, she was like, I'm so nervous. I always get this way with comps. And then I watched her on the day. She's like, as cool as a cucumber. I was like, where did all the nerves go? And I realized it's because I think she's done like 20, 30 competitions under her belt. So it's like a different switch flicks in her brain.
Mm,
And she's like, that's a veteran right there. Like watching her compete, I was like, oh my goodness. Yeah, but I think that's what it comes down to. It's the more athletes compete, athletes being at any level, the more you put yourselves in this situation where there's high pressure, the more you understand how you react, the more you become accepting of that reaction, and then you work to either do something slightly different or be like, this is how I'm going to react, but you become better at managing that.
yeah.
And I think the more I speak to, more people who've competed or, encountered lots of challenges in their life, the more it becomes, or like, the similar kinds of challenges that used to break them, the more they go, oh, I just learned how to manage it. I just know it's going to be that way. I
Yeah.
don't think too much about it. I don't give it too much weight. Um, and I just know I will get through because I've gotten through it so many times.
Mm,
And it's that build up of, I suppose, evidence, what I would call evidence of, even if I feel like crap, I will succeed. I felt crap this time, but I still managed to do this. And it's that build up of evidence of success over
yep.
time
Yep.
that I think is what helps you manage those sorts of situations.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm, yeah. It's a fascinating. It's definitely a fascinating thing. Psychology, human behavior in
Yeah.
general. Um,
Yeah.
I think I would love to talk about how, like, so you're a personal trainer, and we are going to get onto the fascia stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But you're a personal trainer, and I'd love to know, like, how you got into it, Okay, so you were in, obviously, we've heard about your personal journey and where that's taken you, and that's probably how you got into it. But like,
Yeah.
what were you doing? What did you study at university, and when did you decide that you wanted to be a personal trainer? Like, how has that all sort of shifted?
So I was doing my undergraduate in psychology and I had 1 year to
Oh,
go before I finished graduation.
okay, so you've
And
kind of gone back to the same.
yeah,
Mm,
yeah, I actually, so right as I was finishing or going to finish my last unit for my undergraduate, I was like, I think I might want to start working with people now. So, and that was when I also started getting into lifting, and I was like, what if I combine the two? And, if I become a personal trainer, it means I can start helping people now as opposed to waiting years if I do get into honors, if I do get into a master's, whatever. Um, so I also did a PT course while completing my final year of university, and I managed to land a position at a wonderful personal training studio, um, which really prioritized strength training, because that's what I wanted to do. Because that was also when I started getting into like powerlifting and squatting and deadlifting and bench pressing heavy. I really wanted to go to a place where that was supported. So this personal training studio, the owner, he understood the value of strength training, and
mm,
I learned so much from him. So I ended up staying there for about 6 years before I went off and started doing my own thing. But yeah, that's kind of how I started. It was almost like a switch. And I think when you said for you, it was like, what if I do personal training? That was genuinely the question for me. I was like, if I start personal training, then I can spend more time in a gym. I can, um, I can actually be in an environment where I can help people physically and try to help them foster good habits and whatever it was. I just did not think it would leave me here, now
yeah,
like several
yeah,
years later. Yeah.
yeah. Wow. What the types of people that you work with? Do you work with mostly women? Do you train men? Like, what's your ideal? Do you find that women
Um,
are open to lifting? Has it changed? Like,
I
what's going
definitely
on?
think it's changed a lot. I think I train quite an even number. I have a very wide range of clients actually. Like if
Mm,
I'm looking back on it now, very diverse. I've like right at the moment, a lot of the strength training clients I work with, they're mainly Gen Pop. So the priority is to get them as stable, as strong as they can be, so that if they choose to stop, working with me, then they've got all the skills that they need to still help themselves. Now, I think that's the one most important thing about coaching is not just the I'm going to get you super strong, it's the what are you going to be able to use if I stop or you stop, do you still have the skills that you need to carry you through? So that's kind of been my priority when it comes to my clients. I've got a very even number of women and men, I would say. Um, I've also got a couple of like adolescent clients as well.
okay,
So
yeah.
some of them too. Not as many. Like I've only really worked with maybe three of them in my like own career. Um, yeah, I think the main concept remains the same though. It's about helping them build skills and also a bit of self-confidence and this sense of what they call self-efficacy. So this belief in themselves to be able to do what they're doing now, but do it alone.
Right, yeah. How does that go for you?
I think it's
It's an ideal, isn't it? And like when
yeah,
I said at the beginning, like you and I have both had a background where we weren't into health and fitness when we were growing up. We
mm,
weren't sports people. And
yeah,
so like being able to demonstrate that actually anyone can do it.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, do people grasp that or is it a bit of a mixture?
I think it happens over time.
Yeah.
So if I look at some of my clients now, because some of them I've been working with for close to 4 years now. So,
Yeah,
since the
yeah,
very
that's
beginning
good.
of when I
Yeah.
opened up my own business. And it's in the little things. So, one of my clients recently, because I've moved to this venue in January, I opened up like this room. And a couple of my clients who are doing face to face with me, I transitioned them to online. So they only see me
Ah,
once a week, but they still do online training. And, these clients are, the ones who came in with back pain, having had multiple surgeries in their knees. never lifted a weight before in their life, and they started not because they wanted to, but because their doctor said you need to start training. They went from doing 1 session a week with me to doing 2 sessions a week face to face. And now that they've been left to their own devices even further, so I've stepped back even more in the amount of guidance, face to face guidance being provided. They've gone from doing just 2 sessions a week to 4 sessions a week by themselves,
Wow.
and actually wanting to compete in powerlifting comps. And
Wow,
I was
that's
like,
so
this is
cool.
the, yeah, I'm just like, this is the biggest kind of growth that you could ever ask for in someone. And one of the things one of the clients said to me was, he said he now feels really confident in how he's able to go into the gym and own his space. To give a bit of context, this client's, he was overweight when he first saw me. He's was quite not very mobile when he first started with me, but now it's to a point where he goes, I just go in, take up a rack, and I know it's mine in the time that
Yeah,
I'm using
nice.
it. Yeah, it's in small things like that, I think. But also if a client goes, yeah, I felt really crap today. I've got a couple of clients who, also struggle a lot with mental health issues. And it's even the transition from I felt really, really bad. 2 years ago, they would have stayed in bed the whole day, and now with the right sort of psychological help as well, obviously in that time, because I think that's really important. Like, I'm not a practicing psychologist yet, but I need to be able to refer them out to people like that. But when a client comes back and they go, now I actually went outside and I went for a walk and I feel tons better, or I didn't want to make the session today but I came and I feel tons better. So it's the sessions that they used to miss
Mm,
that they now actually make, and all the promises they make to themselves that they keep. I think those are the signs of progress that I know that what we're doing is working.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, great. How much does your like background in psychology and your own personal experience with like the mindset stuff that you've gone through, how much of that do you use when you're face to face with a client? Like obviously it's not necessarily as cut and dry as that, but like does it play a big part for you because of your personal interest in it?
I think so, but I also think having done the body work, like when I started doing FST and really working with people's bodies, that's when I really understood you can't separate the mind from that. Um, like
Mm,
health is body and mind. And when you start doing body work, you realize it's a way of building trust. And wonderful things actually happen when a trust is formed between you and the client. And this goes across all sorts of,
mm,
professional relationships. And I think you'd find that with yourself as well. It's like a lot of the best PTs, best therapists, they draw upon every skill that they have. And that's the reason why their clients come to them. When I started, delving into my honors and then into my masters and, picking up more of the counseling skills, a lot of them are things that good PTs already do, but learning more about it helps me be a little bit more intentional. So, and ask different sorts of questions during assessments. And if a client seems off, then actually being like, why? But also knowing when to set boundaries, being like, there's a point where you can't delving in further into them feeling bad is actually not helpful. So
yeah.
what sort of practical things can we do together to help them leave the session feeling better than when they came in? So, specific skills that's been really helpful for me have been things like active listening. So understanding active listening, the value of silence when a client is talking. Because most of the time when we listen to people, we listen with the intent to respond, not listening to actually hear what the other person is saying. Um, and, I think learning how to understand and implement some of those basic counseling techniques has made it even easier when it comes to working with people, particularly those who take a little bit more time to come out of their shell. And I think another thing has been being able to provide like a safe space. So not only physical, but like a psychologically safe space. And what I mean by that is if a person comes to me with a concern, or if they have like a belief or they're carrying something in their body, like they've got an injury on their shoulder, them feeling safe enough to voice that, and not, and to be expect to be met with understanding and compassion rather than judgment and criticism. I think creating that sort of space is really important, and that's what I try to prioritize in all my face-to-face sessions.
Yeah, cool. Now you've talked about we're kind of leaving the big bit till last.
Yeah.
So you've just talked about health is body and mind, and you've talked about trust, creating a safe space, and like how you work with your clients, both like from a mental and emotional perspective, as well as their physicality. Now, the one thing that we haven't spoken about yet is your fascia stretch therapy.
Yes.
And I feel like that's what we need to talk about next. I was just thinking about it, like, because I've spoken to a couple of different guests about somatics and about
Mm,
how we like the stuff we hold in our body. And I know that
yes.
you're from what we've spoken about already, like you're obviously well educated in the science behind human behavior, the science behind our anatomy, physiology, and you kind of touched on that idea that when someone's coming up to competition, if you treat them, that they hold some kind of tension or
Mm,
energy in the fascia. So I feel like there's some kind of connection with that body mind thing.
mm-hmm. Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about the work that you're doing, what it is? I think you did mention, like you kind of went over it a bit at the beginning, what it is,
Mm,
who you're working with, and why, how it kind of ties in with what you're doing,
yeah.
both from a physical and a mental perspective, body and
Mm.
mind.
Yeah. So fascia stretch therapy, also known as FST, was created by Anne Frederick, who's in Arizona. And then her and her husband, Chris, who's a physio, they've continued to create this amazing, beautiful technique and continue to teach it to people all across the world. Um, and fascia is this fibrous connective tissue that runs across our entire body. So it goes into joints, organs. We've got it just under our skin, but we've also got deeper layers deep within our muscle tissue as well. And you want to think of it as this glue that holds our body together in this fine state of balance between enough mobility in some areas and enough stability or strength or tension in other areas. And that's what holds our body together. It also helps us generate and absorb force. It's what coordinates multiple muscle groups together when we move, or if someone moves it passively. So it allows us to stretch across different, what they call fascial nets, so different ways the fascia connects different muscle groups together across the body. We stretch along that and create movement, thereby improving mobility and improving how the fascia is balanced across the body. Sue Ellen, the lady who referred me to you, her husband he suffered a stroke, I think, 4 or 5 years ago, so quite
Yep.
some time ago. And that's the main reason why he came to see me, because the occupational therapist he wanted to see down in Sydney, she said, it'd be great if you get some fascia work done. So that's how we started working together for a couple of sessions. Um, and one of the things I find really beneficial and what makes FST so magical is it allows us to improve mobility and create change in the tissue without putting the person through more pain. And I think one of the things that we societally, have this belief in is for things to change and to be successful, there has to be pain. You even see it in like massage, or, I've had clients come in and go, well, I don't think it works if it's not painful. And I challenge that quite a bit, actually. I go, actually, if it's painful, especially in the initial session, it's not really going to work. It's not a therapy that works, because we're actually allowing your body to open up and yield. We're almost, dancing with it and whispering and trying to listen to what it's trying to say. And that's one of the reasons why it works. That's one of the reasons why I was drawn to this modality of treatment, because when I was a PT, I thought I really love to get into body work. I want to, upgrade my skill set and see if I can provide a bit more to my clients. And there's so many massage therapists out there already, amazing, body workers out there. But FST was something that was quite new at the time. When I looked a little bit more into it, I was like, I think this is what I want to do. So I booked tickets to Canada, did my level 1, and it just,
Amazing. Wow.
yeah, completely opened up a new world. Yeah.
Have you had to do all of your accreditations overseas?
Yep. So level 1 and level 2 I did over in Canada, and then level 3 I went to Arizona to do.
Okay.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the fact that you call it body work, like, kind of indicates that there's something a bit more than you like just a hands-on massage. Like, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like there's a bit more of an interconnection of like energetics and feeling into what that person on the table is experiencing. Would you can you kind of would you say that that's kind of that's what it is compared to, I don't know, bodywork just sounds like it's a bit more,
Yeah.
I can't put my finger on it.
I guess it's more of like a
More
holistic term.
intuitive.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I started using that word because a lot of the fascial stretch therapists used it. I know Anne's used it herself, and I just think it's such a wonderful word to describe what any sort of manual therapy is. So in America, a lot of them would say, I'm a body worker, or I do some sort of body
Yeah.
work, and this could be, remedial massage as well. I think anyone who delves into this sort of manual therapy is a body worker. I don't know if it's formally taught, but some of the best massage therapists I've ever met, who also run like a really beautiful integrated practice, and they are all aware of the mind-body connection. And I think this is the one common thing I've seen in both, good psychologists, good counselors, good, physical therapists, is that they understand the mind-body connection. And I think I'm not an energy worker, so I don't do direct energy work. I know plenty of fascial stretch therapists actually do a lot of Reiki and a lot
Oh,
of
yeah.
sort of like energetic healing work, and I think it's beautiful. But I am absolutely aware of the fact that when you break someone's bubble, when they allow you into their space, you are working with something that is more than just physical. You can even feel it. When someone, when you walk past someone on the street and you become quite wary of them because of the way that they're carrying themselves, or just because of this feeling that comes across you. I don't think those are just coincidences. And I think you definitely feel it even stronger when I'm sitting in the room and a new client comes in. I can already feel something different. They're either nervous or, they're anxious, something, and I think that changes across the session. I can feel that physically as I'm working on someone. And it does require me to be very present, because it's a form of listening. It's a form of listening to what their body is saying and how it's responding to what it is I'm doing. How is it responding when I approach them here? So I think there's definitely a lot there. You don't need to directly work with energy to influence it, but I think you have to be very mindful of what it is you're carrying and what it is you're imparting.
When you do a session of the fascia stretch, what's it called? Therapy.
Yeah.
I keep looking at my notebook.
It's okay.
FST. What does that look like? Is there conversation during it, or is it kind of like more of a, often a massage is sort of lay down on a table with music, and
Mm.
I know it's not
Hmm.
massage, but that kind of environment? Or is it very like, does the person having the treatment have to be kind of interactive with you physically, or do they kind of
Um,
just, you want them to relax and sort
mm.
of let go?
So it can be a combination of all those things. The most important thing is to help the client let go of it,
Mm,
because the floppier they are, the easier my job is as well. But the person's nervous system and their body is going to do what they want to do at their own pace. Sometimes regardless of how much I try to, make it feel safe. And I always tell clients this, because sometimes I'll be, doing traction and circumduction, and that's when I actually move the joint around gently just to see how it responds. That in itself can be very therapeutic as well.
mm.
But they go, I didn't realize I was holding so much tension. I'm not consciously tensing, but I can't let go. And it's always a matter of You've just come into a new room with a completely unfamiliar person who's getting in your space. Your body's going to take some time, and that's absolutely okay. And I think it's also normalizing that response of, it's going to take some time to get used to this environment, used to me, understand the fact that there's no intent to harm at all. And if someone's body's been in a lot of pain, their brain is always on the lookout for something that might make it painful. So it's even just that understanding there's a lot that your body's holding because your brain is trying to protect you, trying to protect it from further pain signals, things like that. I probably talk most in my initial assessment because I try to understand what brought them here, kind of like their, history, what they're presenting with, other lifestyle factors that might influence treatment outcomes outside the session itself, whether they might need more strength or more stretching. That also depends. Like for example, I had a client yesterday, and when she was talking to me about her history and some of the things that she's presenting with, I was like, I think you've got hypermobility, and that's maybe the reason why you're experiencing pain. Not because you're too tight. And she was like, oh yeah, I've been told that. I think I scored like, like a 7 or something like that on the hypermobility scale. So I said, okay, that's good. We'll just do a couple of more things. But I think you're going to need more of a combination of the strength work that I'm going to give you, so it can provide some of the joints that are crying for stability, some strength, and that will actually help, rather than just lots of traction and lots of stretching. Yeah. But yeah, the more relaxed they are, the better. And I do have music as well. I've kind of found a good jazz playlist that seems to be appropriate for, the sessions.
Yeah, cool. Um, how do you see well, I mean, to me, it's pretty obvious, and it probably seems like a pretty obvious question, but I guess it's more directed at you from a like drawing on your passions and how you see them coming together. Like, because obviously you're going through an evolution, as we all are, and you sort of discover things as you experience them, and like, this works, this doesn't work. You're doing your psychology, you're integrating that. What would your kind of ideal picture be of like using those three modalities: the psychology, the personal training, and the FST? I have to keep looking
Yes.
at my notes, sorry.
Oh, everyone just abbreviates it. That's all right.
Yeah, how do you see that evolving together? Do you have an ideal, or do you feel like you'll start to head in one direction,
I
or are you
think I
happy
will
doing what you're
always,
doing?
yeah, look, I think my ideal would be, being able to do some like psych work part-time while still having this business
Okay.
part-time as well. I've started now actioning, doing more like workshops. So I've actually got a performance anxiety workshop coming up in 2 weeks that I'm currently preparing
Okay.
for. So I'm starting to integrate a little bit more, trying to introduce this concept into some of the populations and the people that I'm working with. So at the moment, I'm quite happy to continue doing what I'm doing because I think it's just forming, it's kind of getting a life of its own.
Yeah, yeah.
And the clients who will work with me because of what I provide will continue to work with me, or seek me out. And I think there's always a reason why someone may choose to work with you over someone else. And yeah, I think that would be it for me. Putting out more psych related content that can reach more people without me having to work one on one, I think is my next goal. I would like for that sort of mental health care, psychological health care to be more accessible, because I think at the moment, we don't get a lot of funding for that. Price and finances is a really big barrier to people accessing these services. And I think if I can provide it in a space where people are already in a space where they've encountered these aspects of themselves, that they go, I wish I could work a little bit more on this. Or if my mind was functioning as well as my body, then I think I would really be able to perform really well. I think being able to provide those sorts of workshops in these spaces at a price that's actually affordable, I think, yeah, that's a way of making more of a difference there.
Yeah, cool. So sort of the more specifically for like performance and like what might be holding people back in terms
Yeah.
of like stepping into doing more for themselves
Mm,
physically.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's yeah, cool, great. Um, I think I had one more thing to ask. I know. I went onto your website and because I'm conscious that we've kind of
Yeah.
reached our hour, and I went onto your website and I saw that you had some video testimonials, and they kind of demonstrate the FST. I think that if I wish I lived in Sydney because I would be there trying it out.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like a really it looks yeah, really sort of I don't, looks good. And
Yeah.
you've got yeah, so you've got some video demonstrations of like clients going through the treatment. But is there somewhere else that people can like go like are those videos from social media? Like do you have a bit of a
Um,
following? Is that where you're kind of trying to get your message out there about the things you do more?
yeah.
That was a bit
So
of a
social,
long, convoluted
no,
blah blah.
no, that's okay. I do think the video testimonials on my website have been a big help in terms of helping people understand
What it is.
what it is.
Mm,
And I tried to pick out some of the clientele. Like, one of them is a professional UFC fighter.
mm,
One of the other clients is a massage therapist. And I think my final client was an artist. So
yes.
just a very wide range of showing that FST can actually work for performance as well as rehab, but also general well-being. Um, but my Instagram is probably where I'm the most active, as well as like a lot of people seem to be finding me on Google now, which is
Okay,
great.
that's cool.
Um, the good news is recently, Anne and Chris brought FST level 1 to Sydney. So it was just
Ooh.
yesterday. I actually went and visited
Oh,
them.
great.
Yeah, so there's now, I think, quite a few active level 1 FST practitioners in Sydney. So they may have their own website. I think they'd probably have their own social media accounts as well. So
Mm-hmm.
I think there'll be a lot more access to this type of treatment for people, even for people who don't live, yeah,
Yeah,
so close.
yeah, great. That's cool.
Yeah.
So we're gonna share, if you'd like, share
Yeah.
your website and your
Yeah.
Insta links on my website. So we'll put all of
Yeah.
those in. You'll have your own page in the guest directory there, so people can find you easily. Is there anything that you want to say before we finish? No pressure.
Yeah.
Like any sort of closing things, or if people do want to reach out, what's the best way to do it? Where do you want people to find you?
Yeah. Any
Is your
further
website
questions? Hmm?
is your website the best place?
Yeah,
Sorry, I
website. No, no,
interrupted.
that's okay. Website, Instagram, probably both are the
Okay.
best
Yeah,
ways.
sweet.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But I think if I suppose if anyone listened to this and if any of the content or any of the things I spoke about makes it feel like I would be the, person you would want to work with, whether
Mm,
it's with, strength training or FST or, that sort of mental work. And I guess my doors are always open for inquiries. Yeah, I really do stand by that though. People will come and seek you out for what you
yeah.
offer. You see that in massage therapy with FST. I think I had a colleague ask me actually. I had a colleague ask me, "Do you feel threatened by the fact that there's more people doing FST in Sydney?" And I said no, because firstly, there's plenty of space on this earth in Sydney for all of us. And second, I have my own client base, and there are in the same way that there's many amazing massage therapists in Sydney, but clients pick the ones that they go to for their own reasons.
Yeah.
It's going to be exactly the same. I actually think it's amazing and so good that there's going to be more access to FST because that's been one of the hardest things for people. I've had clients come from like Penrith and Albury, and they're like, "I
Wow.
wish I had this there." Yeah, it's like if you weren't so far away, I'd do this a lot more often. So, but if there's anyone who listened and they think I would be the right fit for them, then yes, my doors are always open for a bit of a chat.
Fabulous. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's been really great conversation. You've got some really good insights, and obviously like yeah, living by your values and what you believe in, and in passing that knowledge and those skills on to others is a great contribution. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you so
And
much for having me.
yeah, hopefully when I'm in Sydney, I'll be able to tap in and get some treatment.
Yeah, it'd be great to meet you in person.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much for your
Yeah.
time today, Erica. Stretch.
Thank you. Thank you. All
Bye for
good.
now.